Hello, friend. Have you ever felt like a failure? Maybe you feel like a failure today. Maybe you feel like you failed at your job or failed as a parent or failed as a spouse. You fill in the blank. If you feel that way, I get it. I've been there. But a while ago, I learned something that really blessed me. I learned it from a book I read by John Maxwell, and the book I think was called Failing Forward. And basically, the thesis of the book is that it's not if you will fail, we all fail. The question is, will you fail forward or backwards? And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to fail forward. Now, I want to share with you some tips that I've learned on how to fail forward. And really, it comes down to attitude. You know, we've all heard that saying, attitude determines altitude. So what are some attitudes that will help us fail forward? Well, the first attitude is that failure doesn't mean you've achieved nothing. It does mean you've learned something. Now, I think that we're on this planet to learn. That's one of the biggest reasons we're here as a human being, is to learn and to grow. And you know, there are many different ways that we can learn and grow. We can learn through books, we can learn through teachings, but guess what? We can also learn through our failures. You know, I think it was Benjamin Barber who said, I don't divide the world into the strong and the weak, the successful and the failures. He says, I divide the world into the learners and the unlearners. So the question is what category are you in? Are you a learner or a non-learner? You know, I think about, as a Christian, we are called disciples. Now, that word disciple means learner. In other words, we're here to learn. We're here to learn from Jesus. And guess what, guys? We can learn from everything, including our failure. So let me ask you a question. Have you learned from that failure? And guess what? If you've learned, is it really a failure? The question is not if we will fail. The question is, will we fail forward or backwards? Now, the next attitude is that failure doesn't mean you're a fool. It means you had the courage to try. John Maxwell once asked a group of people what kept them from pursuing their dreams. The number one answer was the fear of failure. Is the fear of failure stopping you from pursuing the dream that God has put in your heart? You know, I think of Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is considered one of the greatest baseball players of all time. Get this, he hit 714 home runs. Wow! But people forget that he failed almost twice as often. He struck out 1,330 times, but here was his motto. His motto was this: never let the fear of striking out keep you from swinging the bat. Are you allowing the fear of striking out to keep you from swinging the bat? Yes, Babe Ruth failed, but he kept going. He kept hitting, he kept swinging, and guess what? He ended up in the Hall of Fame. Is fear stopping you from going after the dream God has put in your heart, the fear of failure? A long time ago, I redefined failure. I said, failure is failing to try. And see, courage is not the absence of fear. It's God's presence that helps you to move out in spite of your fear. So how do we fail forward? The next attitude is that failure doesn't mean you'll never make it. It just means you need more patience. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs 24:15, get this, the godly may trip 7 times, but they will get up again. They will get up again. Now, someone has said, when you fall down, before you get up, pick something up. But the question is not if you will fall down. We're all going to fall down. We're all going to trip. But we need to get back up again. And just because what you're trying hasn't worked so far doesn't mean it's not going to work. You just need to ask God to give you more patience. Now, the next attitude that'll help you to fail forward is Failure doesn't mean you're useless. It just means that God will use you in spite of your failures. Take a moment and read the genealogy in the book of Matthew. There's all different kinds of people. There's heroes, there's shady people, there's mostly just ordinary people, and yet God used those people for his purposes. And here's one of the things that I've learned is that Henry Blackaby says it this way: if you feel weak, limited, and ordinary, you're the perfect person through which God will work. Why? Because then he will get the glory. I just want to encourage you that some of you think, well, God could never use me because of that failure. You know what? That's the very reason why God may want to use you, is because that failure, that hurt, is your credentials for helping others. How do we fail forward? Here's the next way. Failure doesn't define you unless you fail to love. One of my life verses is 1 Corinthians 13:8. It says, love never fails. Love never fails. Do you know what that means? It means that whatever you do, if you're doing it in the spirit of love, you cannot fail. So what is love? Well, my favorite definition of love comes from James Hunter. And he says that failure is extending yourself to identify and meet the legitimate needs of the other and seek their highest good. But guys, if you and I live a life of love, in God's book, we're a success. You know, I think of this neighbor I had on the farm. Her name was Ines, and Ines lived in this old house, and not many people knew her. But you know what? There's barely a day that goes by that I don't think about her because she loved me. And Ines was a great success in God's eyes because she lived a life of love. And that's what I want to encourage you to do, is I just want to encourage you to live a life of love. So the question is not if we will fail. The question is, will we fail forward or backwards? You know, Dr. Henry Cloud was once asked the question, if you could teach your kids one thing, what would it be? He said, I'd teach them how to lose. The person said, why? And he said, because they will. The question is not if you and I will fail. The question is, will we fail forward or backwards? May God help you to fail forward by using these 5 attitudes. Thank you for joining me today. May you love God and love your neighbor as yourself.